Hello again, everybody. I've got a little video today about the Sprinter I've been converting. As you can hopefully see behind me, it feels like it's actually moving forward. I'm getting really close to having just like that one last major thing left in this van, which is obviously the convertible bed that will be sitting behind me. But I would say in general, minus this list I have of what feels like an endless amount of tiny little tasks to finish up, I would say I can like truly start to see the finish line on this project, which is very exciting. So today for you, I've got just another little build update. And these updates have kind of served the purpose for me as just like a place to highlight some just like little odds and ends that didn't fit into the context of like some of the more focused kind of long format videos I've been putting out. And today will kind of be more of the same. First thing I'd like to do is talk about a couple things related to USB charging, which feels like nowadays every little personal electronic device or like headlamps or anything, they all just charge through USB. So I think having some good USB charging capabilities in your van is kind of a necessity, or at least a very handy feature. Then I'd like to talk about the fridge I'm using in this van, a couple unique things about it. And finally, I'd like to point out my little reading lights, which it appears I forgot to highlight during my actual lighting video. So with that, let's get started. Okay, so the first thing to talk about with USB today is going to actually concern this little thing, which is about to get replaced for a different USB outlet. If you watch my projector video or my light bar video, you will know that I actually cannot power my USB projector through this. So I'm actually going to have to replace this for a USB-C PD or power delivery port. So we're going to be swapping that out today. So this is the little unit that I'll be replacing this with. This is a little unit made by Cool Gear, and as you can see here, it can do that 20 volt 3 amp capacity, which is what my projector needs to charge. And I've had pretty good luck with Cool Gear. It is an actual brand despite its hokey name. Now I don't want to have to recut this, resand it, refinish it, so we're going to probably make a little bit of a plastic backer. And if you've seen my other videos, I sort of hate having wires showing, so we're actually going to be taking off this metal cap so that we can just mount this essentially to this face, and it looks nice and kind of, I'm not sure, purposeful would be the word. What would be the word? So anyways, let's make that little project right now. Now, while we watch this footage of me modifying this overhead bracket, I do have a couple of quick things I want to say about USB ports in general. First off, the USB port that I have installed more than any other model in a van is this 4-port unit from Magnedyne. Now, I'm actually not installing any of these Magnedyne units in this new van. They just didn't have a couple small features that I really wanted. But they are the USB charger I recommend more than any other unit out there. Let me point out a couple cool features about them while we are watching me install a different USB port. The Magnedyne units, they just fit in regular household receptacles and use the same wall plates. But I think its big advantage is instead of having some kind of USB outlet where you have to run your inverter to essentially have to go from 12 volts DC to 110 volts AC and then back to 5 volts DC to have your USB powered, this thing is designed to run on 12 volts DC, which I think is just way more power efficient than having that needless conversion to AC and then back to DC. That said, as I stated earlier, I figured out I needed to find a unit that could put out these USB-C PD power ratings, which is up to a 20 volt 3 amp unit. So this little unit by Cool Gear seemed to fit the bill. It is designed for 12 volt DC systems. And about my only complaint about it is that the way it's built, it's designed to be kind of mounted with the cable running out the back. And given where I had planned to have this USB outlet in the van, I just really wanted a much more seamless look. So that's why we're watching this footage of me modifying this thing to install and where I had thought the Blue Sea system unit would work. Okay, and there's the finished product. And as you can see, it's got this tiny little LED in here. I really just wish companies would go away from this. I mean, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I don't know. To me, sure, once in a blue moon, you're thinking, wow, I'm glad this light is on. It lets me know my cable is bad. But then you've got this annoying little light here, and if you're a little, I don't want to use the word anal, but what's the word? If you're a little particular about parasitic draws in your van, then every time one of these happens, you're just a little annoyed. So, oh well, that's there, but now we've got a way to play our projector without having to use our inverter and our AC outlet here. Okay, so besides that USB outlet out there, which, you know, we just talked about for the projector, my other kind of USB hub in this van is actually over here in this compartment. And this is actually a 10-port trip light unit. Now, 10 ports might seem a little excessive, but if you think about it, when I'm traveling with my girlfriend, we each have a phone, we each have a headlamp, we each have a GPS watch. I've got a Bluetooth like headphone thingy. She's got a little headset. I mean, that's 8 things right there and 8 cables. And that's kind of the problem these days, is everybody's going to kind of a proprietary cable. So you can't just kind of rotate a lot of your things. You just end up with all these cables just hanging out of the wall. And as a result, I'm hoping that we just have some just permanently kind of placed cables here. And although it will be kind of a rat's nest, that rat's nest is just kind of sitting in this little area instead of like in our old van when we had the outlets kind of mounted on the wall. They were just, you know, always dangling down. So I am hoping that that kind of alleviates the clusterfuck of just having so many cables. You will notice though, I do have this thing on a power switch. Now this triplet unit I specifically chose because the little AC-DC adapter for it went to 12 volts. So I thought, hey, I can just run this in the van system. But I ended up having some second thoughts about that. I kind of opened up the case and I couldn't figure out whether this thing was truly needed 12 volts or if it would be okay with what the van is going to produce, which is going to be, you know, something between 12 and like 14.5. And probably I thought it would just burn out the USB unit if that was too high of a voltage, but I didn't want to risk accidentally like frying our electronic devices. So inside this cabinet, actually, I ended up placing a little Victron unit that can stabilize voltage. And as a result, I now have this power switch here. When I plug this thing in for like a bench test, it also draws essentially no power in like a standby state. But ironically, that Victron unit, that was kind of an afterthought, it actually does pull some power, but it does have an on-off function. So if we're not using the van for a while and I remember about it, I can hit that switch and then this thing isn't effectively drawing power by just sitting there. Other reasons I chose this unit is just its form factor. You know, this piece of wood here, it just looks quite seamless, even though those cables are obviously going to be a bit of a rat's nest. I'm just excited that it's not like some kind of weird big block. It's just like a very minimal look to it, which is what I was looking for and hoping to pull off with it. And those are the things I wanted to say about how I've set up USB charging in my van. And now we'll move on to just a couple quick thoughts about the fridge. All right, so in this van, I chose to have an elevated fridge. I know, you know, having a low center of gravity goes a long way and everything, but I just think I've been in vans where every single time you want to get something out, you've essentially got to bend over and try to find things in what seems like this hole low to the ground. So in this van, having it here kind of at like chest level, I think it just makes the space a lot more usable. And this is something you're going to be using all the time. So why this specific Vitrifrigo unit? Well, this is one of their external compressor models. So instead of having the compressor mounted to like some part of the back of this fridge, if you look inside my little sliding cargo doors here, the compressor is actually mounted well over here. Now these external compressor fridges, it does make for more of a pain in the butt during the install. And if you do ever have a problem with it, it's going to be more of a pain in the butt to remove it. That said, the advantages here though are that inside the fridge, if you've looked at one of these fridges before with the integrated compressor, the way they'll essentially fix that is you'll either have only half of a freezer compartment, so all of this will be kind of cut in for a compressor, or at the bottom here, you'll only have one of these trays down here. But by having that compressor on the external, we've got more storage inside the fridge and a bigger freezer. And then the other obvious benefits are just like, this thing is going to be way quieter and it is way easier to vent. You know, if you build a cabinet like this and you try to follow their ventilation guidelines, it will mean you'll have to have like some kind of holes cut in the side here, or you might get trickier and like try to vent it externally or something. But by having it down in the cargo area, it's just way easier to have it kind of open and have more ventilation. Here, once I close these doors, it's essentially just like in a completely separate little compartment, which I think makes it just way quieter when it is running. And since we're talking about the fridge today, it's been on my list of things to do to make the little cover for it. So I thought I'd just make a quick video about that. Now the material I'm going to be using for this is this perforated stainless steel sheet. Once again, no surprise from McMaster. Now the local Home Depot and such, they do have some kind of perforated metals like this, but I think they all look kind of hokey. I just like this. I think it's fairly elegant, doesn't look too tacky or anything, and it isn't cheap. But you know, this sheet I have in here that I don't remember, it was maybe 3 feet by 4 feet or 4 feet by 4 feet when I bought it. I mean, it's probably been a couple years because I don't do too much with it, but I just make, you know, little vent screens as needed. So it lasts a long time and I think just looks really good. And working with sheet metal products like this, I mean, all you really need is some of these snips. You know, there's like 2 different directions and then a straight cutter, but you could probably just get away with one if that's all you had. And then I do find one of these is kind of handy for when you're trying to like bend an edge over. It just makes it nice and easy to grab a slightly larger area. And as you'll see, This end vise I have on my workbench definitely does help as well, but I think if you didn't have one of these, you could always just clamp the metal to the edge and then just like clamp a piece of plywood over and use that as your hammering. And then it's a pretty simple process. I've taken a piece of cardboard and drawn kind of the curve this thing has to make. So then I just cut the square I need out of the perforated sheet. First I bend the top and bottom edges so I can screw this thing on eventually. Then I make little snips in that top and bottom edge so I can actually bend the thing to the profile I need. And then at the back of the van, I just use quite a few little small screws to attach this thing. I think this sheet will allow plenty of ventilation for the compressor, and if we've got any stray cargo, I think it should protect the compressor from any kind of contact or damage. And now, just this last little like 30-second point. During my video about lighting in the van, I totally forgot to bring up these reading lights that I have. And these are a specific model that I've been a big fan of. They're kind of got this brushed stainless steel look, and they just make a nice kind of spotlight you can see. All right, so here's the little light that I'm gonna get in the package. Now honestly, the wiring on the end here, it's doesn't scream super confidence. You can see they've got a little like sludge there or something, but it's clearly not assembled in the most advanced manner, but I've actually never had one of these fail, so no complaints like that. That said though, if you get the wiring diagram, it also leaves a little bit to be desired, primarily because red wire positive, black wire negative, with the minus and plus sign here. But if you look at this, there's no actual red wire coming out of it. And if you do follow these back, white will be negative and black will be the positive lead. So that's, you would just wish they would clear that up. It just seems like such an easy thing to fix, but there's probably 500,000 of these sitting on a shelf somewhere. And once they sell out of those, perhaps the next batch will be fixed. But anyways, I really like these lights. I think they look fairly elegant. They have a nice swivel, and I've had good luck with them, so I'm hesitant to find a replacement. So you see I've got the two there. So when the sofa is in its upright position, each of us can have a little reading light if we want. If the bed is down as it pulls out to here, then unfortunately only the person sleeping on that side will have access to a light, but they'll have a little reading light that they can use. And then the third reading light I have is at the back of the kitchen over here. And this is just kind of, one of us wakes up in the morning, me, and I got to make coffee. And this way I don't have to turn on all the lights in the van. I can just have a little spotlight over here for where I'm cooking, and not, wake the princess up. And that's it for this video. I've been trying to use these, to kind of highlight some ideas or like some design considerations that I feel like took me a while to appreciate or be aware of in kind of like my van building progression. So hopefully you found some of these interesting. And, just as always, thanks so much for watching.